We brought the hood to the west side. Westside Radio.
What's going down, y'all? It's Julio G. Welcome to Westside Radio. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and checking us out. I appreciate you very much. We're getting our subs up, so please hit the subscribe button, please, and the like button for us to help us out. Tonight, I want to do something special. I've had a lot of different people come on the show, but I also want to give opportunity to up-and-coming artists also. So tonight, we're doing something special. I brought a special guest. She's very connected with some people I know, and she's got some great music. FOREVERxGENESIS.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure and very humbling to be here in your presence.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate you. I mean, you came because one of my friends, Tony A, you're working with.
Yes.
And so he's the one that told me, and I have been listening to your music. I really like the single you put out.
Oh, thank you.
I really like that record. I was listening to it actually on the way up here. How did you get connected with Tony A to start working with him?
Tony met me at a show. I was doing a show in Industry Hills. He introduced himself to somebody of my team who is a videographer. They exchanged information. Then Tony introduced himself to me. We exchanged a few words and then left it at that. We started following each other on social media. He invited me over down to be interviewed on Rhodium Radio a couple months later.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my first interview on Rhodium Radio in January of 2020.
Okay.
So this was right before the pandemic.
Okay.
So I had my first interview with Tony. Then fast forward to about April, he invites me back. He gives me a call, and he's like, "Hey, I would love you to come back to, Rhodium Radio." And then the rest is history. I came back for a couple episodes on Rhodium. I did a couple episodes on Freaky Tales. And then I started to realize that Tony knew a lot of mutual friends of mine that were introduced to me by my ex-manager who passed away, Alex G.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just found that we were in the same circle around the same people. And that's where, we stayed friends since.
Okay. How did you get into music? You've been releasing music, or this is the first stuff that you've been releasing right here?
Well, I've been releasing music since 2015.
Okay.
But this is my first project that is actually me, that I'm actually proud of. And I say that because there was a lot of creativity control in the past. I was under a lot of people who wanted me to do something like things in specific. I was never allowed to really experiment to what I wanted to do. It was always what everybody else wanted me to do.
Yeah.
And because I didn't really have that much confidence in my production, I didn't have that much confidence in, I was just thinking too highly of the wrong people, that I put myself in a box without realizing it. I just released, for me, compared to what I've done now, just personally me, I feel that the things I've released in the past were very mediocre compared to this project.
Okay.
Because I feel like this project is very I just think very highly of this project because it's me.
Okay.
So
and you produced all this, and you put the music together, everything?
Yeah. So 98% of it is produced by myself. I wrote it myself. And I say 98% because I did have some co-production help from Tony A, Mixmaster Tony G,
Mm-hmm.
and also my friend Dominator Dominguez, which they know him as DJ Dominator. They just did the polishing up, like, hey, add this and
Or take this out.
Yeah.
You could do this better.
Tony G was the crash guy because he's like, one thing I noticed, you don't add any crashes to your production. And it was true. And I was like, Tony, I don't have any crashes that sound good, just add them.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of that. And then Tony A stepped in and helped me with the polishing up of all of my bottoms, like my drum beats and all of that.
What got you into producing yourself though? Like what made you say, I want to make the beat and be the artist? Like, cause that's difficult. It's not very, people don't understand that process. To make a song and then be the singer and artist of the song is very difficult because you second guess yourself a lot. You don't really know, is this hot? Because you're by yourself. You're basically doing everything by yourself. But how did it work out for you? How did you get started on, I'm going to produce myself and make my own beats?
Well, initially when I started this project, I wanted to start this project to present it to other artists because I really have a passion for producing. So I never thought of myself of being the artist on these records.
Oh, okay.
I wrote these records with other artists in mind. For example, I think it's Nobody Else. I wrote that song with Sofia Maria in mind. I was like, dude, I think she'll sound really dope singing this record. So when I wrote this record and I produced this record, I wrote it and I produced it with the intention of giving it to an artist and saying, I'm a new an upcoming producer. I would love to write with you. I would love to work with you. Check this out. I wrote the song with you in mind, you know, kind of like a pitching, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
to make
yeah.
a sell. And that was my whole intention of this project. But when I started taking it to other people, when I started taking to people, for example, like Tony A and then Tony G heard it, they're like, no, this is dope. You know, and especially Tony A was more of the encouraging one, like, hey, you need to finish this. Like, this is actually really good. That's when I was like, okay, I guess I'll be the artist. I just I felt like I was kind of burnt out from like being the artist because everybody knew me as a talkbox girl. And but prior to Tony A, my good friend Alex G, he's like, you need to start singing and you need to use your singing voice. You know, put that talkbox thing to the side. You know, use your singing voice. You know, do something different. So when Tony A came around and encouraged me to start singing, I was like, you know what? I guess I'm not that bad of a singer, so maybe I should just finish this project. So that's when it became that.
Talk to me about this talkbox thing, because I guess you started doing talkbox first before you made music like this, or
Yes.
Okay, what got you into doing the talkbox? And did you use the talkbox like with the
like
real with the
hose
and everything,
yeah,
huh?
yeah.
How did you get into using the talkbox?
So I got into that, I want to say early 2015. I didn't know what the talkbox was. And long story short, I was at work one day, somebody's cell phone went off, and I believe I heard it through the grapevine by Zap was a ringtone.
Yeah.
And I heard the
talkbox,
chorus,
yeah.
the melody, and I was like, what the hell is that? I was like, that's dope. And I was too embarrassed to ask. So I went home and I started Googling a bunch of random shit, like robotic voice,
Yeah.
robot voice with this, until I eventually ran into Zap on YouTube. And this was like when YouTube was barely starting. So it was like so hard,
Yeah.
you know, to find something. And then I figured out what it was. Then they're like, oh, it's a horn driver, it's a guitar driver. And I was like, okay. So I ordered one off eBay. I think it was like $180.
Wow.
And I ordered one off eBay. And I was like, I want to start using this. So like my desire to want to use it is what started that. But when I first got it, it sounded like crap. You couldn't even understand what I was like, man, he makes it look so easy. And I was so frustrated. And then I just slowly started doing things like I started melting the tip of the hose. I started putting tape at the bottom. I started, you know, rewiring things. I started, you know, doing the old school stuff with stuffing the sock inside the amp. I was just doing a bunch of stuff until I finally figured it out. And then one of my dad's good friends, he is a talkbox enthusiast, and he's like, hey, your dad told me that you're doing talkbox. So I took it over to him. He did like 3 clicks and he's like, boom, here you go. Mess with it. And that was like my first patch ever. That was like the holy grail for me.
So can you explain? I want you to explain a little bit something. When people watch the talkbox, they're watching you with the tube in your mouth.
Yeah.
And then you're playing keys with it.
Yeah.
So explain what that is at the talkbox. Are you singing one note and then you're playing the note in the key, or are you singing the note as you're doing it in the hose?
So the sound comes out of the keyboard and out of the hose into your mouth.
Okay.
So you're pretty much just kind of like a puppeteer almost, except for the sound is coming out of the hose. So you have to create the vowels with your mouth. So if you're saying something and I had no hose, it'd be like a lot of enunciation, because you have to learn how to create the words with your mouth. Like it's
not easy. No, that's for sure.
Not.
But when you do get it, it
comes naturally.
I know.
Very naturally.
I was very lucky. I was very fortunate to work with Roger Troutman.
Really?
Yeah, I worked with him and Eazy-E. We did a song for Eazy-E's last album, but it didn't end up making the album. But I knew Roger Troutman from when I toured with Mellow Man Ace in like 1990.
Wow.
We were doing shows together, and he jumped on a tour bus with us one day, and I was teaching him how to use the SP1200. And then I was showing him what sampling was, because he was he knew what it was, but he hadn't seen like somebody really play with it. He was really fascinated by like what was going on with the drum machine with the SP1200 back then.
Yeah.
And then later on, like that 94, around 94 is when we hooked up and done something with Eazy-E in the studio with him. Yeah. So he did a radio drop for us where he just grabbed the talk box, and we looped. Tony G actually looped one of his songs, and then he got on the talk box, and Eazy-E just wrote down like the names of us on the radio show, and he just freestyled it right there, one take.
Wow.
He just looked at the paper and just jumped on and said, "Ruthless," just started just going off. It was just crazy to watch him. What was really interesting about him was that after he put that down, he grabbed a guitar and was the most amazing guitar player I've ever seen. I actually think he did the guitar better than the talk box. I was like, wow, this guy is like really, really musically inclined. I'm talking about natural. He was just really, really, really talented.
Wow,
So rest in peace. Rest in peace. That must be fun though, doing the talk box.
It was, and I actually got noticed by the Trotman family, and they've been very loving and open arms.
Really?
They actually gifted me the driver they used for the Tuxedo record.
Really?
So I have that horn driver that was gifted to me by them, and it's like special to me. And
Oh yeah.
to me, that's a huge gift to receive from such an iconic family and someone who's so big in the music industry, you know, and to be noticed for something that they capitalized on and be like, hey, we want to give you this gift. It was like, oh, it was so humbling.
Yeah. I have to ask you on your, this is an EP you put out. You haven't put out like a full album, just this EP right
Just
here?
the EP, yes.
Okay. You didn't talk box on the EP.
No, there's no talk box on this.
Why did you choose to not do it?
I wanted to show everybody that I could do something different, you know. But I think the biggest
How about at a show? Do you use it at the show? Do you jump on at the show and do it?
Not for my first show as FOREVERxGENESIS, I didn't, but it is something that I'm considering for the future for the fans, because the fans are asking for it.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
You know, but my thing with this EP is that I wanted to show everybody that I could do other things than talk boxing, but I really wanted to set the standard with this EP. I needed this EP to really set the standard for independent artists, because I truly believe that the whole term of independent artist has been really washed down and has been taken a very lazy approach by my generation.
Yeah.
Where they're not paying attention to things that were of importance at one time, like for example mixing and mastering. They don't care about that. They'll go pay some dude $20 to go get it done, and they'll be like, yeah, this is my song. Just like, dude, yeah, you have a great song, but the quality of the sound is not there.
Right.
You know, I just wanted to set the higher bar for that.
Right.
And it was really important, not only for that, but also for myself as an artist to completely rebrand myself as FOREVERxGENESIS and walk away from the whole, you know, Magic Girl talk box, you know, thing. So.
Right. I want you to get a little bit more to explain a little bit to artists, because that's something you brought up that's so important that I tell artists all the time. Making a record is great and that's fantastic, but it can be lost in the mix. It could be destroyed, your song in the mix, or made in the mix. It can go both different ways. You understand that it's the sonic that counts.
Yeah.
It's the production is great and that's fantastic, but if you don't have it sonically all together and the frequencies in the right spaces, it's cool. It's just like an average. It could really make or break your song. But how did you understand that? Because you ended up working with Tony G, which was smart, and I seen you work with the Glove.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you work with people that understand sonic music, you know what I mean? But what got you into understanding that? Because a lot of artists, like you said, they don't understand that. They just want to hurry up and put it up and throw it out, you know?
Yeah, that came from coming from a family of musicians, and my father is a big influence in my life musically. He was signed to a major, and he was one of the main keyboard players to a big band in the Spanish industry called Grupo Anhelo.
Okay.
But before that, he was signed to this group called Tinta Blanca, which was the first Spanish band to sign to CBS.
Okay.
And record under CBS back in the 80s. So he comes from a generation of what I call, it was like the golden era of grupero music. So his sound, like his ear for music, always stuck with me, you know, growing up in the studio and hearing, and he would listen to some of my stuff, and he was like my biggest critique, you know. And he would always tell me like, that's good, Jenny. He's like, but it doesn't sound right. Like, he's like, why are you getting these people to mix it? He's like, get somebody who knows what they're doing. And he would introduce me to his friends, and he would take me to, you know, big people, legit people in the industry who knew what they were doing. So that kind of always stuck with me. And then when I started doing my own thing and working with a lot of other people, I had such high expectations for them that when I was sitting there working with them, and it's no shade or anything, I got love for everybody, but I was highly disappointed in the quality of the work, because there was nobody who took pride in what they were doing anymore. Like they just wanted it out fast.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
I just told myself, I was like, this needs to be done right. So fast forward to when it came down to mixing and mastering, Tony A's like, you know, who are you thinking about mixing and mastering? And then I asked him, I was like, I would really love if you can talk to Chris. So we took it over to Chris, and then Tony A was like, I want to introduce you to Tony G. And then that's when that happened. And after I got the first mix back from Tony G, I was like, okay, this is where all my music's going for the rest of my life.
Right.
Like
right.
he takes pride in what he's doing. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And, you know, I
And he knows
don't.
how to mix a record. Like he understands like
Yeah, I
what to
mean, he's
get what
been
you
in
got.
radio. He's worked
Yeah.
with so many
Oh
artists. Like
yeah.
he schooled me so much on frequencies and
Yeah,
Logic
for
Pro,
sure.
and I'm just like, wow. And he's so patient.
Yeah.
He's so patient.
That's his key.
He's never been like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'll ask him the same question 3 times,
Yeah.
and he will explain it as thoroughly as the first time. And I
Yeah.
appreciate that, because somebody like him, like, he doesn't have to sit down. You don't have to sit here and talk to me.
Yeah.
Like, you guys are like way up here. You guys paved the way for artists like me to come and walk through the doors in the industry. You know,
Yeah.
you guys don't have to do this. But I think it's a responsibility that artists in my generation don't take. They take for granted, because they don't see that there's still people like you guys who take the baton and pass it to the next person,
Yeah.
and don't take the baton and throw it over the gate so no
Yeah.
one gets it.
No, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And I feel like my generation is the people who try to throw it over the gate so no one gets it, but they don't even have the baton yet. They have a stick.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
That's how I grew up with Tony. Like Tony taught me how to do music. Like
Mhm.
that's where I learned, is watching him. And we started as DJs first. And he's the one that got me into radio in the 80s. But when I got into wanting to produce, he was the one, like you said, he's very patient.
Mhm.
So and sometimes I get frustrated myself because I didn't feel like, damn, I can't learn this. Like this guy's explaining it to me. But little by little, just being around him, I started to understand and started to figure it out little
Yeah.
by little. But like you said, he's very, very patient. I wanted to ask you, this single that you have out,
Mhm.
that was something you said you recorded. You already had that, huh?
Yeah, I already had it. So, Lost in You was done, I want to say, like 4 or 5 years
And those
ago.
songs are written with other people in mind. Because when I was listening to
Yeah.
the music, I thought you were writing that to a specific person.
No, I just had them with other people in mind. Like, I just thought I really wanted to jump back into the industry as a producer and a
Mhm.
writer. That's just what I wanted to do, you
Mm.
know. And I've worked with a lot of, good people, and I was recently working with a Pretty Tony Butler, who
Wow.
was the
Debbie
producer of
Deb.
Debbie
Oh my
Deb,
God. So
all
many,
of
so
the,
much music. Yeah.
yeah. So I was working with him,
How was
and
that experience?
it was actually really dope. But the hardest thing though, and one thing that I do regret that I haven't been able to do yet, is actually flying out to Miami and being in the studio with him.
It is a different feeling. Yeah. You
Yeah.
want to be in the room and you want to be there experiencing it together. Like, I think we got something, you know what I mean? It's just an exciting feeling when you're in a room with somebody and you feel that both of you feel like, oh,
Yeah.
I think
And then
this might be it.
and then over the phone, when I was we were doing the first takes, because I re-recorded Debbie Deb's records, the When I Hear Music and Lookout Weekend.
Okay.
So when I was recording them, I would send him the takes, and then he'd call me back and be like, "No, do it like this." And I'm just like, "I don't know how you're gonna." And it was like 50 takes later. He's like, "Okay, we're gonna use that one."
Okay.
And I'm just like, "Oh, this could be done like so much faster if I was there."
Right.
So it's a different experience.
I think the music you're doing is great, especially that first single you put up, because I think right now a lot of Hispanics are like revisiting funk all over again. It's like this new generation is just really into like the old school funk, the stuff that I grew up on, but it just like, it seems like it's brand new to them. Like they're really dancing a lot to it, and you just see a lot of people grooving. So when I heard that song, I thought, wow, this is like perfect right now, kind of timing for that. You know what I mean? Because people are into funk. People are heavy into funk, especially Hispanics right now. So that's a good thing.
Okay.
Are you putting out a whole album, or what's going on with the situation? I know you did an EP at this point, but are you going to put out a full album?
Yes, I'll be putting out a full album. My approach plan is that I'm going to work this EP for about a year, and then I'll start releasing the albums. I have 2 albums that are already complete.
Okay.
I just don't want to put them out because I truly believe in quality over quantity. So there's no point in me releasing an album right now when this one hasn't even been heard by the quarter of the world yet.
Right.
So I want to make sure that I work this EP properly, and then, if this comes out to be as good as I thought it was, then I'll keep the next album for myself and put that one out.
And there you go. And you're from Bakersfield, huh?
Yes, born and raised.
Yeah. Shout out to the Baker boys. Shout out to Mr. Chalk. Shout out to C-.
C-.
And who else came out of Bakersfield?
Corn, Buck Owens.
That's right.
Merle Haggard.
How did you make it out of Bakersfield? Because you're from Bakersfield, you said, right? It's not easy. You know what I mean? It's not. It's just so. That's why when I see people come out of like smaller towns, I give them mad credit, because you have to be persistent, because it's not nothing around you really. How did you end up like getting out of the Bakersfield thing and start making music?
Well, I worked backwards, and I really took my manager's advice to heart. He told me one day, my friend Alex, and I was getting on, like, I was doing the shows at Jerry's Pizza in the basement. I was doing like a lot of stuff downtown, and I was getting like a lot of recognition there,
In
a lot of
Bakersfield?
support in Bakersfield.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he told me one day, he's like, "Jen, what are you doing?" And I said, what do you mean? He said, like, what are you doing? Like, after you do these shows, like, what's next? I said, I don't know. I didn't really think about it. He goes, stop. He's like, I know you want to represent Bakersfield. He's like, but you're not an artist. You're a talent out of Bakersfield. So forget about Bakersfield for a little bit and go get the rest of the world and then come back when you're done. And I didn't get what he meant. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, go get shows outside of here. Who cares about who whatever thinks about you here? He's like, don't worry about that.
Right.
Forget about it. So I started getting shows in Colorado, Texas, and then I started getting really involved in the lowrider community. That's really where I got my start. So I found it hard though, being a female, that a lot of people didn't want to book me because they didn't take me seriously. So what I did is I started another strategy approach, and I started Lowrider Life magazine.
Okay.
And that became one of the biggest digital lowrider magazines in the world.
Really?
I've had people reach out to me, try to buy me out. And I was like the biggest thing, but nobody knew it was me. So what I was doing, everybody wanted to be on Lowrider Life. So what I was doing, I was hitting everybody up. We'll promote your show, but you got to book our artist.
Wow. Okay.
So in exchange for putting them on my page, they were booking me shows. And then I started creating relationships with a lot of the people there, with the lowrider community. Then I started getting booked in like Georgia, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Texas.
Latinos are everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah, we're everywhere.
Everywhere. So I traveled all across the U.S. before I did anything in my hometown again.
Wow.
So
so that advice was right. He was right.
did it. Yeah, I did it backwards. And then when I finally came home, and that was maybe like 2 years ago, I was like, man, I feel so good to be home. So taking care of home for me was building a fan base outside so I can work and then come back home and be in peace. So that was the strategy that I took, and it worked for me. It worked for me to be able to get out of Bakersfield. That's
right. Well, thank you for coming through. I really appreciate it. And I wish you much success. And like I said, I love the music. Where can they find you, reach you, and find the music and everything? Give them a breakdown, please.
So my EP is on all streaming platforms. You just have to look up FOREVERxxGENESIS, and then the EP pops up. I have a music video getting ready to drop here in the next couple weeks.
Okay.
And I'll be promoting that on my Instagram, which is FOREVERxGENESIS. And yeah, that's pretty much where you can.
And let me ask you about the name. Where'd you get the name from, and what does it represent?
FOREVERxGENESIS was very pivotal to my rebranding.
Okay.
So there's 2 X's on my name, which signifies the death of my 2 aliases that I previously had. So I was called Miss Lady Magic, then Magic Girl, and now it's Genesis because I've always wanted to be Genesis. So it's FOREVERxxGENESIS.
That's right. That's tight. Yeah. Well, congratulations. Like I said, I like the music, and you're working with the right people, and I expect to see a lot of big things from you.
No, thank you.
That's right, man. We'll check it out. Julio G, Westside Radio. Like I said, check out my girl, FOREVERxGENESIS. She's hot in the streets right now. I'm telling y'all, man. We're going to come back and hit you with more. You know what it is, Westside style, man. Shout out to my boy, Tony A, too. What's up, Tony A?
We brought the hood to the West Side. Westside Radio.